What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu, Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring you incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is a dual board certified neonatal and psychiatric mental health practitioner. She is internationally recognized as a certified trauma treatment specialist, public speaker, author, trauma education consultant. She's an entrepreneur and founder of the Rebuilt Woman. Please welcome Traci Powell. Traci, that is quite the laundry list of achievements.
Oh, yes. It's taken a bit to get there, but there I am.
Are we ever done achieving?
Nope. And I hope I never am, because I love learning and I love growing and
yeah,
better.
But before we get into the Rebuilt Woman, because I love the name and we'll talk about that. Why so much around trauma? Because I think you in your bio says you have overcome some stuff yourself.
So trauma, because we have to back it up to the Rebuilt Woman, honestly.
Oh, okay. All right.
This life where I grew up and became a nurse and got my first nursing degree, and in my 20s had some relationships that didn't go so well. So at about 29, I decided, you know what? I want kids. I want to have kids on my own. And so I got a donor to have a kid. And 3 years later, I still hadn't found the right person. So I used the same donor to have a second child. And we created this life together and ultimately moved to Florida from New Jersey when my daughter was around 10. Came down here, got a beautiful house, beautiful life. I was working in the NICU at that time, became a neonatal nurse practitioner after 10 years working in the NICU at that point. And everything was great. I started all these programs. I was highly respected. Everybody just thought, Traci's there. She's going to help us. And I would hear all the time how independent I was and how amazing I was. And I went out and ran half marathons, one of which I broke my leg in.
Oh my God.
Too much stress on the bone because of all the running I was doing. But still I continued. I was a volunteer at my kid's school. I was a volunteer for different organizations. And around about 2015, I completely collapsed.
Oh my goodness.
Horrific panic attacks. I had this level of depression I had never experienced in my life. And for the first time in my life, I wrote an anonymous message on a message board for sexual abuse survivors that said, here's my life. Everybody tells me how amazing it is and how much I should appreciate it, but I want to kill myself.
Oh my goodness.
What is wrong with me? And it was the first time that I connected with anybody and actually said out loud, I had been sexually abused. And I wondered, could that have something to do with it?
Yeah.
The reality was, through my whole life, yes, I did these things and it looked like I was so independent, but I was anti-dependent.
Yeah.
I was afraid to trust people. I was afraid. I had really bad relationships in my 20s, my teens. And I thought, okay, that's me. There must be something wrong in my DNA.
Right.
And so I ended up I had this great public persona life, and I was good at my job. I'm still good at my job.
Sure.
Do all that well, but the inner workings of my life was a mess. And I was terrified to reach out, because when you become a certain level, in a certain way, how dare you say you're struggling?
Right. Yeah.
And so sadly, one night in the midst of trying to deal with this, and I had started in therapy, and I was having a lot of flashbacks from things that I had long since tucked away. I tried to end my life.
Oh my goodness.
And that night, I can so vividly remember being in my bedroom, looking at my clock, because as a nurse practitioner, vital signs and things. I was watching the second hand go on the clock and counting how many respirations I had. It was like 3, which is close to not breathing anymore.
Right.
And in the midst of that, I heard my daughter's laugh, who was in bed. But out of this, I don't know where it came from, but the sound of that laughter woke me up enough to say, I cannot leave. For one thing, I'd be leaving my kids to be cared for by some of the people that had gotten me in the situation I was in to begin with. And it wasn't that I wanted to be dead. I just didn't want to feel the pain.
Right.
And so I stayed up all night that night, and all I could think, like there was a shift, a huge shift, where I just thought, why would anyone have to die over something that someone else did to them? And why should any of us die because we're afraid to say, yeah, I've reached this level, but I'm human and I need help.
Right.
So at that point, I got my help and I committed myself to getting well. But the process was not easy because I had many therapists say to me, well, you probably need to quit working. You probably need to, I was in a PhD program. You probably need to drop out of school. Stress is not your friend. And I would just be thinking, why would people tell me this?
Yeah.
I would want to foster the good thing in the person.
Right. Exactly.
Help you heal.
That seems like opposite of what they should be saying.
Right. But in retrospect, it came from a place of fear because I had been suicidal. I actually had one therapist look at me and say, you are a liability to me.
Oh, wow.
And I was told, you don't look like you feel like you say, right? You don't look the part.
Right. But none of us do. None of us have experienced.
Exactly.
You know?
And so I set out to figure out how to help myself best. And through healing myself, I committed myself to figuring out a way to help other women, especially like me, who are professionals, who live in silence, and who may end their lives, worst case scenario, but who may live in depression and anxiety all the time because they're afraid to reach out. And there's a way through it and over it if you reach out and you're in the hands of the right person who knows how to help you heal those things, that you can really embrace the life that you created for yourself.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm like tearing up over here because that's just quite the story. I think that your trauma like kind of motivated you because it distracted you and it made you like, I think there's a couple different people, right? The people that are like, they just push it in the back of their mind and they just go after and they're type A and they're just going to achieve. And then you got people that self-soothe, turn to drugs,
Right.
to like continue the cycle, maybe more abusive relationships. What's interesting is when I did a charity event against human trafficking, I'm a survivor of human trafficking. I had a boyfriend that threw me into like sex work, and I was 17. I didn't know. I did a lot of drugs back then, but then I knew I had to turn my life around. And I went into counseling. But when I did that event against human trafficking, the amount of professional women that reached out to me behind the scenes and said, "Thank you for what you're doing. I've experienced this too." I was blown away. I'm like, oh, I've got to be the only one. But there's so many women like yourself that have experienced, because being sexually abused, that's a form of human trafficking in the home or with a boyfriend, significant other, whatever. That is a form of it. And so, I learned all about that when I went through, when I was working on the event. But there are a lot of women, and I'm sure I mean, it's amazing how many are hiding that secret and don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah. And the thing now that I really try to stress with women is I'll have a lot of clients come to me and I'll say, well, I didn't realize I feel like this because I wasn't abused. Nothing traumatic happened to me. And you don't have to have been sexually abused.
Right.
You don't have to have been physically abused. The reality is, oftentimes, it's our emotional wounding as children that is the thing that really has us stuck as adults.
Yeah.
So, I can remember my abuser wasn't one of my parents. It was a neighbor. And I can remember when I would try to deal with it, like my therapist would want me focusing on the event and what's happening to me. And in my little child brain that's going on inside of me, I'm like thinking, well, why are my parents not saving me?
Right. Yeah.
That is the piece of it that people don't understand. We can have traumatic things happen to us, which are the bad things that happen. But attachment wounding are good things that didn't happen that should have.
Right.
Very often it's those attachment wounds that create that sense of I suck. I have no worth. I can't do a good enough job. So that perfectionism kicks in. Let me keep achieving more and getting more and doing more to prove myself to the world.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't always have to be there's been this major trauma. And that's go ahead.
What was like the turning point for you where you were able to start getting over it? And and how long did that take? That had to take some time.
So I was in therapy for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I had very little progress. And I would think to myself, if I could just have someone sit with me for a day.
Yeah.
Time in the space. Because, it's an hour. You go, you say hi, you check in what went on this week. And the whole time you're sitting there, a nervous wreck because you don't want to deal with the trauma or the issue is. But by the time you get into it, it's time to leave.
Yeah.
And so most of the time, like very little was accomplished. And it would keep me stuck in depression and anxiety because it would stir it up and then I'd get home.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I just realized there's got to be a better way. And especially when I was in the mental health field, the idea of doing an intensive day with anyone, oh no, you can push them over the edge. It could be too much. They can't handle it. And I will tell you, in my experience, it's the total opposite of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So I found someone who would sit with me for the day. And I learned about what's called ego state therapy, which has been the life-changing thing for me and for my clients. Because when we're kids, we have emotional developmental needs.
Right.
And when those emotional developmental needs are not met, it affects the neural architecture of our brain. And so we can develop these neural networks in our brain that says, I'm awful, I suck, or something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Which is why it doesn't help when we tell people, change the voices in your head. Tell yourself affirmations. I am good. I am kind. Yeah, those things may be true, but if your inner fabric of your being says, no, I suck, I'm not worthy. If your young self learned that, the only way to go back and change that is to go work with that young self who was stuck in the past and playing those recordings of the past in our subconscious mind. And so I had someone work with me, with my younger parts of self that were stuck in those messages that said, I deserve to die. No matter how good I do at work, I really suck. One of the common themes in my life was, who do you think you are? You're nobody. You're not great. I never tried to be anybody. I just wanted to get good grades and do well in school. And when I would do that, I was belittled for that. So the message became, don't dare do anything good.
Right.
So my life, it was like, when I was praised at work, I'd go and ball for 2 hours because it would be so overwhelming for me that somebody would see something good in me. And I understand that was because years ago, people made me feel bad for doing good things. Now I can sit in my truth and say, no, got it.
Wow. What a journey. Holy cow. Like, I'm like, it's just striking so much emotion in me. And so when did you create Rebuilt Women?
I actually created it. It's been 6 years ago now.
Okay.
Now I was doing a coaching business. I was focusing mostly on trauma or sexual abuse survivors at the time. But as I continued to learn, because even then I was still struggling with my own, why am I stuck in this sexual abuse? It happened a long time ago. Why am I stuck in it? And it wasn't until understanding the attachment wounding where I really understood. And, you know, it's so interesting now because when I work with clients who are sexual abuse survivors, most of the time, when we deal with the attachment wounds, the sexual abuse kind of resolves itself.
Yeah. See, that's the first time I've ever heard of that, attachment wounding. I've never heard that before with all my guests and, you know, people that have dealt with trauma. Can you tell us what that, I mean, you've spoke about it a little bit, but what does that mean for someone?
So there's two kinds of wounds in childhood.
Okay.
Wounds of safety and wounds of emotion.
Right.
My safety wounds are, I don't have my needs met physically. I get abused. There's sexual abuse, right? And those are the common things we think about, that we, all the traumas of childhood.
Right.
But then there are things that don't meet our emotional needs. So I need to be seen. I need to be heard. I need to be soothed. I need to be helped to manage my emotions. So if a child falls, say they're 3 years old, they skim their knee, and a parent's going to pick them up. They're going to kiss the boo-boo. They're going to clean it. A parent who's got their own traumatic attachment wounded past is going to go, knock it off. You're not hurt.
Yeah.
So what does the child learn? My needs aren't important. And then add to that, I haven't helped the kid learn how to calm down. The kid is going to freak out. And so you take this little person, and when those kind of events go on throughout life, we have to be bonded to our parents, who are the main people who teach us how to react in life. And if that's not happening, then I don't learn how to react. So in my adult life, my boss comes to me and gives me a look that I don't realize my subconscious mind is remembering that's how my mother used to look at me, with disdain.
Yeah.
I could have an overreaction, and suddenly now a younger wounded part of me is showing up in my life today.
Holy cow. That's like a bomb just dropped, because I feel like I've got some of that. My father was abusive. And so like, yeah, I like internalize a lot of things. So is that what that means? So that you have the attachment wounds where someone does something that has nothing to do with you, but you internalize it.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
Because as kids in our developing brains, we don't know how to make sense of it.
Yeah.
right? All we know is I'm this little kid. So in my life, my father was an alcoholic. My brother did drugs. Most of the people in my family drank too much. And there was a lot of meanness that went on. Grandmother was mean. And I was this little girl who just wanted to be good. I loved my pets. I loved my stuffed animals. I just wanted to love everybody.
Yeah.
Got treated really poorly. And so in my head, the decision was, there must be something really wrong with me. I'm the black sheep.
Yeah.
And so you grow up thinking, nope, there's something really wrong with me. And even though I do the right things, I'm inherently flawed and broken. But what it is it's kind of like your whole life you're taught 2 + 2, and you instantly know 2 + 2 is 4.
Yeah.
Those messages your whole life, you instantly know something's wrong with me. I'm not good. I'm not worthy. They were bad messages.
Yeah.
The amazing part of it is it's not too late to change the message. Like if 2 + 2 was always 5, we could go back in and help you relearn. No, you just were misinformed.
Yeah.
And, the truth is, I don't think most parents don't have children expecting to screw them up. Most parents want to do the best by their child. But when you've got people who themselves didn't have someone model for them how to be a good parent, they're just doing what they were shown how to do.
Yeah.
Creates all of this within the person, and then you grow up. And instead of the adult you driving the bus of your life, children are driving the bus of your life. And things don't go well when the child drives the bus.
No, definitely not. Yeah. I've learned that hurt people hurt people. So when someone else is hurting, they tend to lash out and hurt others. And like, that's, I think that's something that has been a very valuable lesson for me as I've grown in my own personal development and gotten through things. So you started Rebuilt Women 6 years ago, and initially you started working with just sexually abused women, but now you're helping women with all different types of trauma.
Yes, because as I started to learn more about this, I realized I needed to further my education so that I could do a better job. So at that time, I was a neonatal nurse practitioner, and even through the nurses I worked with, I actually had a nurse come to me after I told my story at work one night. So we were just chatting. There was a tornado warning.
Oh, wow.
We were all sitting in the halls with the babies. And then the tornado never came, but we just were chit-chatting, and somehow all this came up. And I swore once I started telling my story, I would never not tell it if I felt like it would be helpful. And at the end of that conversation, I went in my office, and one of the nurses followed me in, and it was a nurse just like I was. Everybody respected her. Everybody went to her for help. She collapsed on my floor. She had to tell me that she had a plan to end her life 2 nights later.
Oh my God.
Where the same thing had happened to her, that she's in her 40s. And this happens with a lot of women. Suddenly that's when it hit.
Yeah.
The reality of everything I've held down starts to bubble up. And we don't even know what's going on now because it's been so long since the actual event. And I just learned then I can't not talk about this.
Yeah.
That healing can happen in the right hand.
Why do you think that women in their 40s tend to start waking up to some of their past traumas and hurt, and it starts bubbling to the surface?
It's a good question. And it is a common question that a lot of us, I would love to know the answer to that. There's a lot of theories that, maybe we're in a phase of life where things are happening that remind us of our own experiences. I know for me, I had the perfect storm. I was dating a man that I really loved. He was very kind. We had a good time together, but I was never settled in the relationship because I didn't know how to be in that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
So my inner voice said, I don't deserve this. There's something wrong with me. I can't be with this. And ultimately he left because he was like, why will you never let me be there for you?
Yeah.
And at the time I didn't know. I was afraid to let people be. I didn't think I was worthy. And I also used to go back up to Maryland. I was a camp nurse up there every year. I lived in New Jersey, but I would go to this camp in Maryland because as a nurse, your kids got to go. And so we all had fun and we would go. But every time I'd go up there, I'd start, like, my depression would get a little bit worse. And I'd come back down here and it'd be harder to move past it. Well, that year, with the breakup and then the depression got even worse. And then I saw the movie Frozen.
The movie what?
The movie Frozen.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it, so.
Well, I'm gonna watch it.
I love kids movies.
So I'm watching this movie about this pale blonde chick who was forced to live with this deep, dark secret her whole life. Conceal, don't feel, don't let it show. And I'm like, holy shit, that's me.
Yeah.
I might not have magical powers, but this secret has been keeping me locked away inside myself all these years. And so those three things really started to bubble things up in me, and old things that had happened started coming back. And that was finally the point where I thought, I need to figure this thing out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that it's a time of, I think we get more clarity as when we're in our 40s. I know for me, I lost my first husband. He passed away when I was like turning 39, I believe. And, and then I got involved with another like abusive boyfriend. Like right afterwards, I thought I had gotten past all of that. It was like after this, losing my husband and all this trauma happened, I'm involved. I like reverted backwards. So that's when I was like, okay, time out. What's happening? Why am I going backwards? Why am I attracting this kind of person again? And I just stopped dating for a very long time. Well, after he passed, number one, I had to grieve. But then number two, I'm like, why am I getting involved with someone like I had gotten involved with before? And it was just a very interesting time for me. And I have to say, like, I'm on the other side of the coin now. I've definitely done a lot of healing and a lot of growth. But that was a time for me I was reflecting as I entered my 40s. I'm like, holy cow, I got to deal with this shit. I can't keep going through this. I don't want to repeat old patterns. It was a very interesting time. And I think it just like we start, having more clarity at least that's what I think. So it forced us to deal with that stuff.
Well, and I think too, it's funny because I have a lot of women saying to me, why do I constantly attract this kind of person? Mm. And my answer is always this: you don't attract them. They are everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Out there testing every woman they can get their hands on. The problem is no one taught you boundaries.
Right.
No one taught you deserve better. And so if you don't know and have the skills of how to handle someone like that, oh my gosh, narcissist, the love bombing that comes in the beginning.
Yeah.
If you're attachment wounded. You just want someone to love you.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be your father. So other men come along and they're, oh, you're beautiful. You're gorgeous. You're the love of my life in the first month, right? And what is it? It's everything an attachment wounded person wants.
Yeah.
Save me. Be that person for me. And then once they have you, that's when the true person comes out and you're stuck in the situation.
Yeah.
And it's a process of understanding what's going on inside of me that I even allow that to continue in my life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I remember when I started, like after I went through my healing, I think we're always on a path of healing, right? I think that's not really it, but I remember when I started dating and I was like, it was the first red flag. I was like, nope, bye, see you later, blocked. Because I'm like, I am not dealing with it. I'm being very clear with my boundaries.
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell us what we have an idea of? It's not just people, not just women that experience sexual trauma, but other types of trauma. Can you tell us what that would look like for anyone listening that might be experiencing something where they would feel comfortable coming to you?
So the way I do something very different from most people. And I think this helps with being a nurse practitioner because I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So the psychiatry is the body part.
Yeah.
This is the mind part. And the spirit has to be part of it. We have to have all three of them in alignment. And even those of us with attachment wounds are going to have a physiologic traumatic process going on. We're going to have a stress response. Because if I'm always worried somebody hate me or people talking about me, right? My stress system is dysregulated. And so it could cause migraines, it can cause GI problems, it can cause all kinds of physical ailments, and it can cause a lot of anxiety. So the first, I do a typical 3-day process where people come and they work with me for 3 full days. They've got my attention. The core day is like 9 to 4, but I always adjust my days for whatever my client feels is best for them.
Okay.
First day is just really me understanding their history, understanding attachment wounds, understanding what they've been through and what their goals are. And then it's understanding how much of the physiology do we need to talk about so that they can learn how to calm their nervous system and move forward in their life. Then we really get to, okay, let's understand who's driving the bus of your life.
Yeah.
And, very often there are wounded younger parts of us. And this is not, some people get confused and think, well, are you saying I have multiple personality disorder? No, I'm not saying that.
No.
These are what are called dissociated parts. And we all dissociate. Every one of us. If you're staring out the window, daydreaming for 5 seconds, you're dissociating. Dissociating simply means to disconnect.
Yeah.
So we all need to do that. But when you're a child, if my father is screaming at me that I'm such an idiot or I'm an asshole or I'm stupid, I may disconnect from that because I can't, as a kid, be engaged in that.
Right.
So that I can live my life. And But that part of me stays kind of encapsulated and holds that message of something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
So we have to go back to those dissociated parts of us and understand the story and what happened, and then fill in the missing information. So that child at that age didn't understand, first of all, your dad, it wasn't even about you. He had problems.
Mm-hmm.
He was also a little boy who had someone who didn't treat him good. And so he didn't know how to treat you right. And, it's just filling in that missing information. And the one of the most important things to me that I feel like is really life-changing for people is I started with this light exercise we did. And I believe we all have this inherent light in us. And sometimes, when we're born, as an ENM nurse practitioner, who I hand a baby to is going to determine how bright that light gets to shine, right? But if I hand a kid to a parent who, they might have a beautiful house, they might live in a mansion, have everything they need, but the parent is belittling, the parent is absent, they're constantly traveling, that kid develops the sense of worthlessness.
Yep.
And so it's about saying, okay, you always had this light, but these things covered your light.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing is the light never changes. You just don't see it.
Yeah.
The whole goal of the 3 days is let's get you back to your light, the authentic you.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be run by the messages and the actions of the people.
The labels.
The labels, exactly.
Yeah.
Because we label ourselves too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm stupid. I'm worthless. I'm a problem. Hurt people, yes. But sometimes hurt people hurt themselves more.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And we don't recognize that in ourselves. And so the next day is really about, let's get to the core things. Let's heal them. Let's that person, usually it's a little girl, her light back and her power that she didn't know she had. Oftentimes we are enmeshed as adults, which means when we were kids, we learned I have to behave a certain way to control that person's moods, even if it didn't work. So we got this magical thinking that says, I must control your moods. I must care for your moods. So then as adults, we end up still acting that way with the people around us.
Yeah.
Always on alert, worried about other people's moods. And that enmeshment makes it hard for us to separate ourselves from somebody else's bad mood is not my fault.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to take care of that part of it. And once they step back into their power, the third day, if we have things to tidy up, we will. But then I encourage them, okay, we're going to do something today to reinforce all of this. What is something you always wanted to do that you wouldn't do? What is something that will stretch you into this thing that you want to do outside of your comfort zone? Because up to now, the comfort zone is let me feel bad.
Yeah.
So crappy. And people don't realize that when you sit in that comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
I had a client one time as an actor, and we're talking about his comfort zone, which his comfort zone was anger and fear and stressing himself out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But he knew something called repetition compulsion. I'm going to keep myself in that place. And I said to him, so we got to practice on getting you out of that comfort zone, because out of your comfort zone is peace.
Right.
But our brains are built to go toward what it knows.
Yeah.
So if comfort zone is all the time, my brain's going to want to go that way. And he said to me, well, no, I go out of my comfort zone. I go and audition for roles I know I'm not even going to get. Right? Because in his head, that's stretching him. I'm look at how hard I'm making this on myself.
Yeah.
The reality was that was his comfort zone. You're choosing to do something. If you know you're not getting the role, why would you even put yourself in that situation?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like good to rejection, glutton for punishment. Right.
But that's what he had known his whole life.
Yeah.
Rejection. My dad rejected me. My mom rejected me. I've been rejected. I am a rejected child. Now I'm going to keep replicating that. But in his mind, it was like, no, I'm stretching myself.
Wow.
So now, when he goes for roles he thinks he might get. Right now, he sees it. And that child has been taught that he's no longer stuck as a child. He's a grown man with options that he's allowed to make for himself. And he has no one else he has to please.
Wow. That's amazing. With that being said, Traci, where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more if they are interested in working with you or know someone that might need your help?
You can find me at www.therebuiltwoman.com. Everybody's welcome to reach out to me by email, Traci, Traci, at therebuiltwoman.com. Those are the two best ways. I do have a Rebuilt Woman page on Facebook. And for nurses, just so they know, I actually started a group called Nurses Healing Nurses on Facebook because there are so many nurses struggling right now. And that private group is there for nurses. They're interested.
Excellent. You guys, I'm going to put those links in the show notes, so don't hesitate to go check her out on our website or send her an email if you are dealing with some trauma or know someone that might be needing some healing and think that Traci can help. Do not hesitate to reach out. Obviously, she can speak from experience herself, and she's helped many, many people heal those broken pieces of them internally. Traci, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
I would like to leave to every woman out there who is rocking their life, but feeling not settled inside. Your internal experience is not matching the external world. I want you to know you're not broken. There may be some things that have happened that you aren't even in your awareness right now. It's in your subconscious. And there is a way through this. So please don't think you have to stay and suffer alone. These things can be healed, and you can step into your life fully and live a life of peace and authentically as yourself. Constantly worried about what other people are thinking or that there's something wrong.
Beautiful. Well, Traci, thank you so much for sharing your story. We are happy that you stepped out of your shell and let people know your story, and now doing great things and helping other women rebuild themselves and heal, because healed people are happier people, right?
That's for sure.
So thank you so much, Traci. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll have to have you back, and you can update us on all the wonderful people that you are healing all over.
Happy to do it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.